of the show, the part we've been looking for.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is my experience in this House that there's nothing like an employment relations bill to bring out the fire in both Labor and National and where those divisions lie. So it is for the True Balance and New Zealand First to come through and sort through the mess that we've been listening to. First of all, for this crimes theft by an employer member bill, this is New Zealand first opportunity to contribute this to this bill. It was put into the House during those dark, windswept days when we weren't represented in these halls. And as Duncan Webb, the Honourable Duncan Webb, articulated in his speech, whilst we may have changed horses in the ensuing period, we actually haven't changed our core values, and that is very much we are an egalitarian party. New Zealand First, because we haven't had the chance to be in this process up until this point, we're taking the last call here, not for any nefarious reasons, but for the fact that we weren't part of that select committee. The bill did come up quite unexpectedly at the last Members' Day, and we wanted to listen very carefully to what both sides had to say before taking it to our caucus for discussion. It is the view of the New Zealand caucus that this bill is not without some merit. New Zealand First has always taken a balanced approach to employment relations. We absolutely believe that a fair day's work deserves a fair day's pay. We have an absolute history of championing workers' rights, and particularly around increases to the minimum wage, which we've taken into and been successful in coalition negotiations. We actually had Dennis Mager, the chair of, or the chief of the First Union, speak to our convention on the weekend. We're genuinely interested in hearing workers' perspective on employment relations issues under this government. Conversely, we also understand that employers are critical to building this economy. They risk their own capital, often put their family home up to provide employment and a living for others. 97% of the employers, the businesses in this country are, in fact, small businesses, Mr. Speaker, with under 20 workers or more. In fact, so much do we understand this. I could go back to the Honourable David Parker over there, he would remember this. We absolutely arm wrestled Labor to accept retaining 90-day trials for those small businesses under 20 workers in the 52nd Parliament, because we do understand that critical balance between employees and employers. I'd like to commend the member, Camilla Balich, for bringing this bill forward and taking it, picking it up from Ibrahim Omer, the original proponent of this bill, and thank you, Camilla, for your constructive engagement as we have worked through some of the details. There's New Zealand's first view that there are two clear anomalies in the law. It is already a criminal offence for wage theft for immigrant workers on work visas. New Zealand First cannot see why New Zealand citizens or permanent residents should not be afforded the same process of legal redress. Secondly, it is a criminal offence for an employee to steal from an employer, and this to us seems an inequity. So New Zealand First will be supporting this bill through to the committee stage. We do, however, have heard and we've listened carefully to the concerns on this side of the House. So we do want, there are some things that we want to see examined further through that committee stage. This bill must focus on real crime, intentional and malicious acts of theft by employers, not unintentional mistakes or delays due to cash flow issues. Without clear distinction, the risk is that honest employers facing financial hardship may be unfairly penalised. Moving this issue from a civil to a criminal jurisdiction changes the burden of proof for both employees and employers. Criminal cases require more evidence and resources, potentially straining the justice system or making it, conversely, potentially harder for workers to successfully pursue cases. Further, we believe that the shift from the balance of probability to beyond reasonable doubt will increase the difficulty for employees to prove theft by employers. The higher threshold could mean fewer successful prosecutions. This requires further investigation to ensure that the bill truly benefits employees without creating unintended consequences. So New Zealand First is eager to ensure this bill does go to the committee stage, does get tested by all parties in this Parliament. We will remain engaged and working through the finer details. I'm sure the member will help us to alleviate some of those concerns. But at its very core, we believe that business is about paying and being paid. A fair day's work deserves a fair day's pay, and you should be paid. So with that, we'll commend this bill to the House, Mr. Speaker.
So, the icing on the cake.
Credit where credit's due. They're supporting something really good here.
I would say that, we got sorry. I was just going to share the good news here that, of course, we can't generalize across the board and say all employers are, and demonize them. I mean, there's another good example, even in the National Party side. You have Ryan Hamilton, right? He the MP for Hamilton East. Interestingly, his name is Brian Hamilton, and he worked in the hardworking Joe Block's business. There's a cleaner. He worked his way up with his dad, and then he had a cleaning company and had developed it into 4 franchises. He was sharing his testimony. So he's actually a hardworking Kiwi bloke. Frankton, he lived in Frankton, which is kind of on the labor side, interesting. So again, although he is with National, he's a good employer because he pays his workers well, and we can't generalize across the board and that all employers are exploiters. That would not be the case. So
that is true, Dr. Erica. But the question has to be asked that even though there are national MPs that are probably really awesome bosses, why are they against this bill? That's the question that needs to be asked.
And are they being whipped? Well, they actually are probably being whipped to vote against it.
All right, I see what you mean. Okay.
Tends to be what happens in our parliament is there's a high level of whipping. We're probably one of the highest level of whipped parliaments in the world.
Sorry, what were you saying the last part? Can you repeat that, sir?
We're probably one of the highest whipped parliaments in the world. So when it comes to voting, I think we're probably one of the few that actively use party vote as its standard vote method, rather than was it walking through the eyes and the nose doors? Like I can't even remember the last time I've seen a bill actually where people walked through the eyes and the nose doors and you had a bunch of tellers in there, because most of our bills go through party vote. They don't go through individual votes.
I mean, the conscious vote is when it comes to, for example, I mean, the homosexual
religious
law
issues.
Reform, the homosexual law reform was the bill was on, was a conscious vote, and what did the choice to die, David Seymour's bill, that was a conscious vote. And there are times where the parties actually allow the conscious vote that the MPs make
the banning of gay conversion therapy for second and third reading, National let their MPs vote with their conscience, but in the first reading they were whipped into voting no.
So there are times, most of the times though, the party would actually decide, and it's the whips kind of like sit down in the chamber. They would vote on behalf of all the party. So that means whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't count. So your vote is going to be counted whether you like it or not. And it's a party line that you have to follow. And you are the member of the caucus, you have got the obligation. If you go against that, then you have a big problem.
It is interesting because MNP Ibrahim was meant to be more representative democracy when it was started in 1996. I remember voting in the referendum for it. And Ibrahim and everybody here, I mean, Laura too, is meant to be more representative. So we should allow the individual members of parliament to have a conscience votes on most bills rather than, and you notice you have that.
I love me some direct democracy.
Yeah. How about the 5% cap? That is anti-democratic. I mean, we said, we extol ourselves as, look, one of the most progressive nations in having MMP after Germany. And then the next moment we have a 5% cap. I mean, even if I think a political party has 1%, they should have 1% of the vote. They should have one MP. Let's say if there's 131 at UDY.
I mean, in Germany, to do coattailing, you need 3 MPs to coattail in Germany. But in New Zealand, that wouldn't actually get to, even trying to get near that threshold, because Germany in the Bundestag, they have 660 MPs, I think, at least. Whereas we have 120, which I actually personally think we actually need more. But, the other one is, if they lowered the threshold to 4%, that would still bring in 5 MPs into Parliament. And if you have 5 or more MPs, you have to have a person in the debating chamber at all times to represent your party in the need of voting. You can't proxy vote, and that's the reason why a lot of the parties.
If this bill was a conscious vote, and more than half of the national MPs would vote for it.
I would say so. I mean, maybe even
I can put my hand in my hat and say half of them, more than half of them would have voted for it.
And I would also say, if you put this out to referendum, it would majority pass in there, because people go, hey, what? How is that not a criminal offence? Of course I'm ticking yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of employers would tell you actually like, what? And I do like, like as a union person now, I talk to a lot of employers about this, and a lot of them actually, they support this bill because they know that it's not going to affect them, because they know that they do the right thing. They pay their employees on time, and they pay their full amount, so they don't have any problem with it.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, guys, that we should do away with that 5% cap and really?
Oh, well and truly. I think at the current point, an increased number of MPs to 150, and then I'd say drop it down to 3%.
Right. I don't get you. Why do you need more MPs to be more MMP?
Because we have had a 25% increase in population, but we've not had an increase in MPs since 1996. And at the rate we're going to end up with a lot more seat overhangs under its current system. Okay. So if we shifted to, like, at the moment, the law states that the population to work out a quota is the South Island population divided by 16, and that works out the population quota. Pre-MMP, that used to be South Island population divided by 25. I think it was 25. And at that point in time, there was no maximum number of MPs that could be in there in the first past the post system. But with MMP, we've got to go up there. And the thing is, as our population has increased, our electorates have increased to compensate, but our electorates themselves, but our total number of MPs haven't, and the list MPs are going down each time there's a representation. Like the next representation review, we're due to go up to 73 electorates in New Zealand. And also the fact is, with more urbanisation, there's a lot more populations that are swelling into big population centres. At the same time, some of these rural electorates are getting very, very big. If you sit there and take a look at the Wairarapa electorate, the fact that it crosses 3 regional council boundaries throughout the process is quite a big electorate. You look at West Coast Tasman, you've got Haast at one end, and you go right up to Farewell Spit at the other. I
once drove in Wairarapa with Kira McNulty all the way to, I think it's
Waipakarau, but not Waipara.
All the way up to part of Hawke's Bay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you look at Taranaki King Country, it stretches from Waitara at one end right up to way past Raglan and cuts right into not quite Tamaranui, but just around Tamaranui, and effectively around the side of Hamilton and halfway up.
As it stands now, people actually miss out on representation, on the meaningful representation of
a good example that Tim McIndoe brought up with me, when he first was elected in 2008, Hamilton West covered a whole heap of rural underlying area. I think it included Narawahia. When the boundary redraws came in, it narrowed its way down. But people outside the constituency, instead of going to Barbara Courager because their new MP, they kept going to their old local MP because Tim was closer. And he had to sit there, and so Tim had a memorandum of understanding from Barbara Courager that those ones near Hamilton, he was allowed to act on behalf, being shepherded as they worked out an arrangement with that. But he said that was quite noticeable because every time they kept redrawing the boundaries, the epicentre point started from Auckland. And we, like him and I said, maybe the next redraw, the epicentre should start from Hamilton, because Hamilton's about hit similar size of population to Wellington, but it's only got 2 MPs, whereas in Wellington we've got 3 electorates. So that's something where there could be a change, as should Hamilton be the starting point of the radius of the new electorates, where you could have a Hamilton North, a Hamilton West, and a Hamilton East, or something like that, and cover some underlying rural area that is kind of part of Hamilton. I mean, also, if you look at the Taupo electorate, it includes Cambridge. and Cambridge is a 20-minute drive from Hamilton. Yeah, I mean,
demographics requires the change, isn't it? The demographics, the population expansion and growth. So from that context alone, it requires more representation, isn't it? So,
and that's why I believe we need to increase the number of MPs, but we need to change the population quota, because when MMP first came in, the average representation was 55,000 people. The average representation now is 65,000 people. So that's the other thing to sit there and also, go up on that particular one. And the thing is, when you're representing, 15% more of the population, but you've got the same resources, it does take a bit on there. And especially if you get some areas like the fact that you've got 2 list MPs and elected MP from the Wairarapa at the moment. You get other situations, so that's something which is quite unusual because that's not normal for that to have happened. Wairarapa might get a lot more done because they've got 3 people batting for them, but in the case of MMP, but it doesn't, what happens if you're Taranaki King Country, Barbara Courager is literally basically, got this very huge area. It will take probably 4 hours to drive from one end of the electorate to the other. And basically, got to represent a lot of people because she's literally basically from just north of Waitara all the way up to well beyond Raglan. Yeah,
interesting, because if you look at what do you call it, the Freedom New Zealand Party, right? They had like 1% or something, and then there's another New Zealand Loyal 1%. So by right under MMP, they would have 1 seat each, kind of, let's say 100%.
Possibly 2. If it's 1.2%, it could be approximately 2 seats.
So at least they would be more representative, and just for the sake of not wanting to be a democratic purist here, but in terms of MMP, which was meant for representative democracy. So I felt that, and then of course, I mean, they could be on the right, but let's say there could be some parties on the left.
Look at Top. I mean, Top could have would have got at least if the threshold was if there was no threshold, they would have got 3 MPs.
Yes, they would have 3 MPs. So maybe we need to do a bit of.
There's a lot of things that can be fixed in this government. A lot of things are not right. But that's probably because the discussion for another day. Otherwise, we can go until tomorrow and we're not going to cover it.
Now, I've been. Stacey has reminded us there is 20 minutes. Well, actually, it's a while ago since she reminded us that there's 20 minutes to go. Do we go on to the Corrections Victims Protection Amendment Bill? Because we're likely only going to be able to get one speech.
Okay, then.